Welcome everyone, good morning. Today we want presentation about dialogue ethical engagement in an age of absurdity. This presentation will be delivered by me and three of my friend, and my name is Nazaregi, and my friend Najla Rashifa, Siva Aprilia, and Valda Artemisia.
Dialogue Ethical and Judgment in an Age of Absurdity. Albert Camus' clearest depiction of absurdity can be found in his first cycle of work, which comprised the play The Misunderstanding, the philosophical essay, the myth of Sisyphus, the novel The Stranger, and the play Caligula. These four projects, which Camus himself connected and considered his first cycle of work, represent his effort to expand upon his understanding of absurdity. But as the following analysis reveals, the cycle of work also provides a solid foundation for Camus' understanding of the importance of active dialogue in an age of absurdity. Anderson, Baxter, and Kisna wrote Readers Surveying the Historical Literature on Dialogue Within Communication. Encounter for names with special regularity: Buber, Gadamer, Habermas, and Bakhtin. A brief sketch of these four authors provides a glimpse into the importance of dialogue for the study of communication ethics.
Philosopher Martin Buber. Martin Buber is perhaps the most widely known 20th century philosopher of dialogue. Buber's contribution include his conception of the ideal relationships, which suggests human beings are not to be objectified as often occur in an IT relationships. Rather, an IT relationships allows and enrich human existence. Mikhail Bakhtin's work expressed a great concern for the role of language in everyday relationships. In Bakhtin's conception of dialogue, the spoken word in contrast to the written word is the primary form of communication. Bakhtin understood dialogue as an ongoing conversation in which one enters an exchange of ideas that is already taking place. Hans Georg Gadamer. Central to Gadamer's work is the sense that meaning is constructed through dialogue. Gadamer does not support the idea that there is a pristine formula or technique that can be applied to conversation to produce a specific result. Much as Camus expanded his understanding of absurdity to include rebellion, the belief that meaning is conquered through one's dialogic interaction is central to Gadamer's conception of dialogue. And the last is Georgian Habermas. Georgian Habermas' writing demonstrates a deep commitment to public dialogue. This focus upon everyday concerns that should have a place in the public discussion is central to his conceptions of dialogue. This understanding of dialogue recognizes that one is entering an ongoing conversation of the ideas that should be discussed in a public context. One must interact through spoken communication in an effort to cultivate an understanding of reality that allows one to navigate successfully through life.
The Misunderstanding. The Misunderstanding provides a glimpse into the absurdity of human relationships. All of human existence, both personal and interpersonal interactions, is experienced against the backdrop of absurd circumstances. According to the Camus, no one escapes the reality of the absurd. This play, written in 1944, tells the story of several characters who attempt to outsmart the circumstances of their own lives. Tragedy strikes those trying to escape an absurd existence through the hidden agenda and trick. Narrative. The basic plotline for The Misunderstanding first appeared as a minor moment in the novel The Stranger, while the main character of the novel is written in the present. He discovers a newspaper article that reports a story very similar to that later developed in The Misunderstanding. In the play, the mother and the daughter, Martha, run a rural inn where they occasionally kill wealthy-looking guests in effort to raise enough money to escape to their dream location. Their son and brother, Jen, had left many years ago. As the story unfolds, Jen returns to be reunited with his family, but first wants to stay an evening to discover what type of woman they have become. Narrative and Judgment. This play represents Camus' effort to combat silence and promote dialogue, although Camus did not explicitly use the metaphor of dialogue in the play. The implication of his idea contribute the academic study of the concept of dialogue encounter.
Next, The Stranger. Camus' goal is to publish The Stranger in one volume, releasing 3 novel titles at the same time, but the problem is limited funds. The purpose of presenting texts together to solve the problem of absurdity. Analysis of each sentence provides insight into how Camus conceptualizes absurdity and further details his understanding of the interaction of active dialogue. The main character, Stranger, was sentenced to death for being too honest about his reaction. In The Stranger, an absurd word is illustrated where someone is cursed if he doesn't want to socialize. Camus brings out the extreme consequence of the nihilism wrestled with in his first work.
Caligula. Caligula tells the fictionalized story of a historical rule of the Roman Empire. After wandering about for several days following his sister's death, Caligula states upon his return why his life will no longer remain the same. Camus intended the play to speak to the concerns of the author's own historical moment, as well as to illustrate his understanding of the absurd. Caligula belongs to the period in which the Camus was most acutely aware of the absurd, the death and the despair of human beings constitute his discovery of the absurd. The emergence of the absurd in Caligula is partly intended to illustrate the absurdity of the 20th century totalitarian regimes that Camus spent much of his professional life combating. The myth of Sisyphus. The final character in Camus' cycle of absurdity is Sisyphus, the clear hero by Camus' standards, who despite his eternal punishment does not attempt to escape his circumstance but continually engages the absurdity of his existence. Although condemned by the gods, Sisyphus does not lose his life in his engagement with an absurd universe. This essay comprises 5 parts: an absurd reasoning, the absurd man, the absurd question, the myth of Sisyphus, an appendix addressing hope, and the absurd in the work of Franz Kafka.
Dialogue in an Age of Absurdity. Camus's philosophy of communication ethics. One can build a framework for taking constructive action in an age of absurdity through the connections among the metaphors emerging from Camus's work. The current postmodern moment is also a moment of contention regarding narrative and virtue, and therefore, Camus's theoretical insight can provide guidance for action in the midst of absurdity during the contemporary historical moment. The following metaphors provide a picture of how Camus's work can provide assistance in the recognition, response, and acknowledgement of consequence in an age of absurdity.
Recognition. Recognizing the absurd circumstance of a given historical moment calls absurdity to one's attention, thus creating the sense that one is a stranger to one's own existence. Response. Camus believed that each individual possesses the freedom to respond to the recognition of the absurd in his or her own unique way. The following 5 metamorphs explore various ways one can impose order on a chaotic and absurd existence. Acknowledgement of consequence. Absurdity for Camus was inescapable. There are consequences to living in the midst of absurdity because it is perfect and inescapable, whether or not one chooses to take action or even recognise its very existence. The following metamorphs explore the consequence of taking action in the midst of absurdity. Conclusion. Camus was not only an eyewitness to these events, but also a participant. Camus was certainly not the only author concerned with absurdity or dialogue, but his unique contribution to the theory of communication techniques comes through his conception of dialogue, which allows one to work from a position of unbound rebellion and points toward an answer to the fall. Pointing to a theme that he would develop further in his second cycle of work, Camus' work, one of the only concerned philosophical position is thus revolt. Camus added, "Thus I draw from the absurd three consequences, which are my revolt, my freedom, and my passion."